Well, Uber Tuber Ubers, short talk at the trailer with the old guy. It's a Sunday afternoon, a little bit after noon, I believe. Now, I kind of debated in my mind whether I wanted to have a picture of me completely in shadow, and I could rotate around, but then I would be staring in the sunlight, so I thought, well, let them. Now, nobody's going to stare in the sun. I'm just sitting out here. I'm going to show you this here, if you care. This is my little green patch. And this, believe it or not, is my lawn. So I'm throwing a little water on her today. Really, for years, the only thing I cared for was that lilac. You might have glimpsed it to the left. It does a little bit of blooming in the spring, and I used to tell people that was my favorite smell in the world. It's kind of rare, but I catch it while it's there. Lilac in bloom. It's like a real light kind of, well, flowery perfume. And boy, if you don't like lilac, something's wrong with you. And so anyway, I call the lilac green. I gave it a name. Figured, might figure out who I'm talking about. So anyway, I'm giving old greens a drink now, and all the little Bermuda grass. Bermuda is supposed to grow so tough and tight that it basically chokes out weeds. Well, that ain't true. So anyway, I was walking through here barefoot a little while ago, and I thought, why do I keep poking my feet? Had a pretty good service at church today. It was a little bit of a surprise. The senior pastor announced that he may be thinking about moving on to, I believe, Ohio. I think that's what he said, because I think that's where they're from. So anyway, I guess they're kind of eager to get, they've been here forever. I don't know, 15 years or more or something. I don't know how long the guy's been here. But he's been senior pastor several years now, and at least 10 or something like that. Who can keep track? But anyway, he looks like he's maybe moving on. Now, I don't know if that's 100% settled or what. And frankly, I just, on the way out the door, I just said, God bless you, man. I mean, these decisions, I'm not going to inform your conscience about what to do or teach you anything, about how to handle big decisions. I think these things the Lord can help you understand when you need to. But for me, who's looking in from the outside, what do I know about it? Other than, boy, it sounds like a lot of work. But, and if they need hand moving stuff in the truck or whatever, I guess I could help hoss up a truck. But I think they're probably going to move professionally. They got a lot of stuff. Kind of I guess you call them close to middle-aged. Maybe they're maybe a little under middle-aged. I'm not going to peg anybody. But anyway, I was sitting there thinking today, and I thought, I think I'm probably off target, but this is the sort of thing that old guys in the park might consider. So this is a quasi-metaphysical / theoretical abstract, which has, as far as we can tell, very little proof. But it seems to ring true as far as I can tell. And I thought, well, I introduced this to one guy with whom I've had a lot of conversations in the past, and this is after church, because it's the same topic I was thinking about right now. And I'm calling it cross-temporal field torsion fields, and that would be you and me. And so torsion field, that doesn't sound like a very good thing, but in other words, what I'm saying is there's various streams which come together of energy and life and timing and your DNA and the consequences of your life that it formed that moment that just went by. You just saw the sucker go by. And that's how we see moment by moment, but most of the time we're kind of asleep at the wheel. We're not actually really noticing too much what's happening exactly around me just now. My mind is traveling. I'm elsewhere. I'm living in the past, or I'm thinking over an old injury, or I'm anticipating something in the future, whether it's good or bad. I'm not really here now, and that one just went by. You notice that? And so this is kind of a constant theme. But in other words, the me that's currently now it sort of exists within about a 3 to 7 second phase, and that's constantly being adjusted, I think. What we call now is actually an indivisibly small point, smaller than nanoseconds. But that doesn't make any sense. Who can count those? So our moments as they go by seem to consist of maybe bits and pieces of a conversation, or maybe you saw something, a bird go by, and it actually took 2.5 seconds, but you think of that as a moment. You're watching somebody fall out of a tree, your little kid, oops, and I mean, to you, time is distorted right now. The actual fall took 0.73 seconds, but in your mind it's like a 6-minute movie, watching your poor little kid. So in other words, our moments have a kind of a rubbery aspect. But in other words, it's a cumulative total. But the thing that you notice, or at least the thing that I notice, hey, I'm going to go move the water. Don't want to waste too much of that stuff. We're in a desert, you knucklehead. What are you throwing water on the ground for? That's kind of the way I think of irrigation around here. this city really irrigates a lot, especially the university, for, you know, just landscape stuff. And I keep thinking to myself, maybe someone should get the memo. We live in a desert. Why are we wasting all this water? Seriously, one of my questions to one of my friends that I met up there in Bear Trap, Rob, good guy. First time I was up there it's near Duluth, a place called Cloquet. I don't think they live there anymore, but anyhow, my question to him literally was, who's paying the irrigation bill around here, man? And he said, what? I said, look at all those trees, all that green stuff. Who's buying the water? He said, God. And I said, oh, that's weird. You guys must get a lot of rain. Ugh. Does it ever clear up? So in my mind, it's like a full tilt switch, either on or off. So anyway, getting back to the torsion fields concept for a moment, I was just fascinated when I first heard about this idea a few months ago. I believe it was on a Y-Files video having to do with time travel or something. But at any rate, torsion field index, I'm thinking there's something solid there scientifically, which by and large is being overlooked. But never mind that. That's just an opinion of an old plumber. So anyway, I was thinking, as these nows unrolled, now, and then now, and then now, we can never really capture one. We can only see them in reverse a little bit. So if you can imagine somebody going down the highway, but the only thing they're doing is looking in the rearview mirror. That's the only vision they have of what's happening around. They can't see what's in front. Or they can just a couple of inches maybe, or a yard or two. Or if they're a big planner, maybe they can see 20 years ahead, see? And it kind of depends on how strong your personality is and how determined you are to focus on a point and make it happen. When we have some kind of abilities like that, and I'm not clear at all, because I think I'm frankly just too undisciplined to apply myself to make things come true. You hear all this junk about the law of attraction and all that, but really what it has to do with is faith. You know, who do you trust? And will you say so? And will you stand on it and make that your, you know, if need be, your last stand? You know, take the bull by the horns, you know, a little bit, and come out in person and say who you are. And I'll tell you who I am. By the grace of God and Jesus, I'm a child of the King. What did I do to deserve that? Only everything wrong that a person could do. I don't qualify as a righteous man, I qualify as a sinner. But in his eyes, he joins and reunites opposites. He's the one who breached that gap for us. So I was thinking about this today, and I thought, well, you know, if this is true, then there's a future iteration of me. In other words, there was the yesterday's view. Remember, I was in a video. There's proof of it. You can go back and look at it. That was me then. This is the me now. Is it the same me? Yes, as far as I can tell. Has that me changed? Somewhat, but then it's not the same me. But it is the same, and it goes backwards until I was, 40, and then I was 20, and I was 18, I was 14, I was 12, I was 6, I was 3. All of those are valid iterations of a thing called Mike Labor, and it really is the me. But the thing is, it's not the completed copy. We're a work in progress, and so the potter is shaping the clay as we speak, as it were. So we're being reorganized, reprioritized, reinformed, renewed in energy, redirected in purpose, and things like that, so that he himself becomes the treasure. He becomes the point. So, in other words, if there are past iterations of me, and I believe there are because I do remember many of them going by, and there's even photographic evidence, so I think we can close that. Is the current me actually here? Yes. Am I aware of me? Yes. So, are there future iterations of me? Well, I think there would have to be. So, are they as real as I am? Well, why wouldn't they be? The Master, who is over eternity and time, he's the one who called us into being. Therefore, should he decide to create a person, then that person, in his eyes, is a person forever. He sees the final version even before the first cell and egg intercept or bind. He knew that person from prior to things. And it's a little confusing to say prior to things, and that's another philosophical discussion that the ancients used to peruse willy-nilly. But I'm not going to get into that right now. I guess I need to move the darn hose again. I hate, when I'm watering and I'm living in a desert, that I'm seeing puddles. So it's like, hey, that's a bad use of water. To me, water is a mysterious, wonderful thing. I really don't even know what the stuff is. But it's fascinating. If you want to read a real interesting book sometime, if you can get a hold of it, I highly recommend Dr. Gerald Pollack. He's a very interesting and innovative author. Water science guy. Very fascinating book. Fourth Phase of Water. Go read it. Dr. Pollack has some interesting things to say about water, but I've often wondered about the stuff most of my life. I can't even tell what the stuff is. But it's wonderful. I mean, it's life-giving and everything. And the plants sure like it. Hey, animals too. So at any rate, I can't even tell if I'm in here. This screen is completely blanked out. So I guess we'll check this for a sample later. And you're looking at the side of my head. What is that? It's the worst video work ever. I couldn't find me in there. But anyway, the short version is, see, we're already into a later iteration of me than when this video began, right? The me that's current here with you, compared to the other me that started this vid, we're each in our own moment. But in my mind, I can kind of stretch it out now and make the whole video seem to be one larger memory, essentially a moment in time, you see. So this is how we forge memories. I don't mean forge them in the sense of making fakes. This is how we make and create memories. We capture moments in our mind that were significant, or perhaps even offended us, or made us afraid, or confused us, or seemed quizzical, or whatever. We capture moments, and we have many memories of these things as they went by. But we anticipate that there are future moments, right? Unless the Lord, he might strike me dead the next quarter second. That's his head trip. But I believe he's promised blessing and life to his children, so I'm going to lean on that. Why not? It doesn't cost me anything, and sounds like a good deal, for free. I mean, it's all paid for by him. This story is about him, not me. And so we're coming more and more out of an old mind, beginning to walk in a new and living way. And in this new way, we anticipate goodness. We anticipate in the future our hope is secure because he lives. In other words, our hope is to be stood up again from the grave at his mighty command, just like he did in Lazarus' day, except every human being who ever lived and died stands up at once and says, yes, sir, what can we do for you? And he's like the prow of a ship going through the waters, some to his right, some to his left. There's only two races in the world, and I don't mean black and white. There's only two races, the living and the dead, the believers and the unbelievers. Now, in the Old Testament system, it sounded like Jews and Gentiles. Same idea. And so there's only two kinds of people. And he's calling his children through the power of the Word as the Spirit operates in our lives through these moments. You see what I'm getting at? It's a spiritual thing that links your identity even to the old you, to the one who hated God for no good reason and really couldn't explain himself either on the matter. Why did I hate God so strongly? I seriously at one point in my life considered authoring a book called The Why I Hate God book by me, And I was much younger then and had, shall we say, some issues with my temper. I mean, seriously, I was just filled with rage. I'm going to go indoors because this light, I hadn't got my photographs on. And I wanted you to see my big, expressive eyes, because that sells a lot of donuts and stuff. Ugh. I don't think anybody buys donuts on the basis of that, Mike. Let's see here. I'm going to go back to my studio where the proper set has already been established so that we feel comfortable. Oof. Now, I've been at it for almost 14 minutes. There's no way I could even see this stuff. So I don't even know if the first part of the video, if you, it's like, hey, are we in the picture? I couldn't even tell. So at any rate, the moral of the story being, oh, by the way, ad revenue, don't forget to show up. Call me Club Soda Guy. This is stuff. See, big financial deals happening as we speak. So in other words, we're to profit along the way, right? So we do things that are good in his sight and good for us and good for others and really to his honor. He's changing us from the inside. But that future me that understands these things better, he does understand. He is essentially seated with Christ. From this other perspective, we might say currently. But because from God's perspective, see, I think, now I'm making this up clearly, but I think that part of the word holiness has to do with three in oneness. So if you can think of old time movies, okay, before they went all digital and stuff, I think a modern movie is just something like it exists on a flash drive. Maybe that's it. There's a little bit of data. But they used to make film reels, great big, huge. These suckers are like 14 inches wide. I think it was 32 millimeter. Is that right? 32 millimeter. It's a pretty good size frame. So these frames would come through, flip, 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 and just at this proper sequence, and it looked like a moving picture because each frame was sequentially far apart to pretty much resemble human motion or anything in motion. It didn't look splotchy. It didn't look like people jerking their way through life. So anyway, an old time movie, you can see it in several ways. You can sit down in the theater and watch it. You can experience it frame by frame from beginning to end. That's our perspective. We're in the theater watching it as it goes by, right? Or you can experience it from another perspective where you say each frame, as it's called out, is sequentially there for a reason. In other words, if your frames were out of sequence, the thing wouldn't look right at all, right? So in other words, each frame is utterly significant in the process of telling the story. So what's the most important part? Is it the individual frame or is it the collection thereof? And in him, the answer is yes and amen. But you can look at it one more way. Think about the God who could spread that tape all over the parking lot and have a complete comprehension of not only each picture and its individual significance, but the sum total and the story behind it and the contributions made by the characters. He sees all of that at a glance. He's up in a helicopter looking at a parking lot with a film strewn out all over the place. And by looking at that film, he knows the whole story beginning to end. In fact, he's the one who called it forth. So my idea has to do with the idea of whether we, in other words, we're always contacting our future self. How? By sitting around. In other words, he just showed up, right? Because this me right now is the different one but it's the same me, isn't it? So we only exist in moments, and I can't get back to that moment, and I can't get ahead to future moments which have not occurred. But in some sense, I have. By virtue of being united with Christ, we now have a new kind of life that where my trespasses being wiped out, my excesses and failures being forgotten in mercy and covered by another. He's like two things. He's like a bomb shelter. I mean, the bomb shelter, if you think of him that way, as when the incoming fury of righteous judgment arises, one bomb shelter will do. That's the blood of the Lamb at the house of Jesus of Nazareth, where the cross is, and the empty tomb. It's all linked. So he's a huge bomb shelter, but he's also at the same time. You might think of it, like you're on the Titanic. The sucker's going down, and you know it. You've decided to respond. You're getting on a lifeboat. Why? Because that's where life is. This boat's going down. And so he's the lifeboat himself, or maybe he's the voice of the captain who says, go to the lifeboats, will you? Knock it off with your dallying around. So quit dallying around. There's a future you, and he or she is blessed. How can you tell? Because his gift is eternal. It extends into a future that has no end. I can't really imagine that. I mean, my mind kind of goes, what? But think of it as an extension cord that you plug in the wall, you plug it into the socket, keep fishing, and you can never find the other end. The cord only has one end. Your life has no end. But that future you, therefore, necessarily exists. Can you communicate with him or her? Is there a bandwidth there where you can think back in your mind, hey, wait a minute, I remember this day, I was here. I was monkeying around with that kind of stuff this morning at breakfast, and I just thought, I'm having a lot of fun. And I tried to take that into church, and it didn't really fly. But my idea was, what if the future me, who has no doubts, the future me who is utterly secure, who has immortal, glorious power, and just overflows with the love of Jesus and stuff, what if that guy upstream could send me messages and say, buck up, kiddo. I remember being there. You made it. Hang tough in Jesus and never give up on the truth. And don't you forget, here's a weird little idea. I was quizzing ChatGPT about this yesterday. I'm just compelled lately in the last 6 weeks by the idea of beauty. Beauty is being deeply endangered in our world. Beauty is not perceived as beauty anymore. And in fact, it's like an endangered species. ugliness and vileness and cruel, unholy mayhem. That's becoming the new norm. And anyway, beauty, it's a weird word. How many words can you think of that have 3 consecutive vowels? B-E-A-U. B-E-A-U. That is unusual. And I asked ChatGPT, well, can you think of any that have 4 consecutive, and they can repeat if they have to. It came up with the word queuing, Q-U-E, I'm going to misspell this, Q-U-E-I-N-G. Anyway, I messed it up. It did have 4, but I'm not even sure it was really an actual word. I'm queuing up, which means I'm getting in line. Well, you must be from Great Britain, I guess. Who talks like that around here? Queuing, yeah. But anyway, I asked it, can you think of even one word that has 5 vowels sequentially? I guess, hey, listener, there's your quiz for the day. And I thought, well, I couldn't even think of one other one that had 3. I got out of several that had 2 in a row. I suppose I'm, somewhat literate. But at any rate, 3 in a row is odd. 4 in a row is very rare. And so anyway, ChatGPT didn't even try to find one. It just said, well, here's the deal, see. 5 vowels in a row would be an extraordinarily rare incident in English. And I'm not going to bother looking. But I thought, see, that's what robots are for. The darn thing could scan every known word in English ever published and do it in about 9 seconds if it was quantum enhanced. That's what they're building. And that's what they want to hook up into your head. No. Your brain tissue is your domain. Yes, and your body too, and even outside of your body. We're not limited to being in our bodies. Our bodies are limited by sin. And that means that death has to be overcome, and in Him, it's happened. So at any rate, the future you says, I'm going to predict your message from your, if you ask the Lord, can you have the future me send me a message here? I need to hear that it's going to be okay up there. Things will get a little square, sketchy down here. What would the older version of you say? Well, think back now. Think back with me. Say you're 25. Say you're 55. Say you're 80. I don't know how old you are. But if you could send a message back to the younger version of you during a period when you were, say, confused or afraid or confounded or just, like, why are we doing this? What would you say to the younger you? And I think if you're faithful, I think if He's at work in our hearts, it'll be a message about Him that, you know what, this guy is the best of the best. And if we can remember to seek His face currently in this now, during this current iteration of nowness that just went by, and to make Him the center of our appetites, then He changes things such that things work differently in our lives. We get different kinds of results. And we can be thankful for it because I know I didn't make it happen. It's God's goodness raining down through His various means. So, if you want to get speculative, if you want to wax metaphysical, you can do so. It's allowed. As long as you don't run away from the base or try to overthrow the cornerstone or contradict apostolic doctrine or anything like that. But you can take all your metaphysics and stuff and basically, stick them in your pocket. And they might be kind of interesting to think them over and, kind of like a little piece of chewing gum. I don't know. My dad told me that when he was a kid, it was depression. And they were dirt farmers anyway. Very poor up in Michigan. And so he had like 7 brothers. And these guys would go down to the hardware store or wherever it was, and maybe it was a little grocery, and they'd buy 1 piece of gum. It was like, 3 cents, okay? A small fortune for boys, And so the first kid to chew it, to get all the sugar out. So the kid would take it out of his mouth, stick it in a sugar bowl, and pass it on to his brother. So each kid gets to chew some gum. But now that we want to mull things over, chew them over, and kind of fabricate or masticate. You want to chew it up, think it over, ruminate. Let the words sink deeply in you. That's kind of the premise. So I don't know why I'm carrying this bottle cap. That's for this club soda. I forgot to put it back on. I'm going to be rude. Bubbly water. Anyway, getting back to water. Water is weird stuff. And this stuff is so strange. If you could actually make new water, like get two hydrogen atoms, one oxygen, and bond them together and have a precipitate which comes out called water, there's no such thing as pure water. Because as soon as that droplet hits, let's say you have a pure, ultra clean, sterile Corningware beaker, and the drops are forming and dropping into that thing in a sterile environment, unpolluted. Guess what? After a little while, you got other things in the water. It's already polluted. Why? It begins to dissolve the Pyrex almost immediately. In other words, water is the universal solvent. Gerald Pollack, again, go back and read the guy. But as a universal solvent, it has stuff in it. It's not just H2O. That's just the beginning of the recipe. It's an H2O soup, an H2O broth. That's the healthy stuff. I almost walked up there yesterday, the spring, but if you ever get artesian water, I guess you'd call it, bubbling out of the ground, it doesn't have to be hot. Water coming out of the ground, that's about as good a water as you can get, because what has happened is the H2O has begun to digest. It dissolves minerals and stuff and salts and various things are in there, and even perhaps living organisms. But the point is that it's never just H2O. It's always this mineral bath that goes along with it, and that's good water. So if you can get a hold of good mineral water or spring water, I think that's the stuff you want. And the stuff with all the chlorine and fluoride and junk, what? If you have to, all right. But that's not what you'd call your premier choice water. And, I get the stuff for $1.38. It says spring water on it. Do I know that? No, they probably got it out of a tap in Chicago. But it says so I feel better, So in terms of what we're talking about with being watered, being encouraged by speculative stuff and metaphysical stuff, the speculative and metaphysical in me says maybe you could send messages across time to your other young self, or the self from yesterday. Hey, you're forgiven. Get over it. Put it down, man. And I was talking to a brother the other day, not my brother, but a Christian brother. And he had a burr under his saddle about something. It just didn't amount to anything. And I said, what I think you need to do is take a king-size dose of get the hell over it. Move on, man. And man, that made him hostile. He was just like, well, think it over, But in other words, in our speculative phase, as we consider what's happening around us, be ye not afeared. The things that are coming on this world are going to scare the crap out of a lot of people. Don't you be one of them. Learn to fear God, and you will fear no man, nor devil, nor any scheme thereof. He reigns supreme, and they fear him, for they know he comes to judge with fury, and they have no hope. But you needn't be part of that crowd. The prow of the ship divides, some to the right. Come into my presence, ye blessed, and enjoy the inheritance prepared for you. To the others, depart from me, I never knew you. And you know which side you want to be on. If you got a brain in your head, if you got a heart that works, choose Jesus. Because guess what? He's better than the best. He's the guy that the word best vaguely was invented to refer to. He's the reality in person. And he dwells across time supreme, from beginning to end. And he's joined us up in the midst of this thing, in the midst of the stream. And like a one-ended extension cord has begun what now are eternal creatures. We already possess that eternal life. I tell you, we've gone through death. If you're a Christian, you've passed through death. And it is you no longer live by virtue of your spirit, but the Spirit of Christ who dwells in you. We were baptized into him in a covenant thing, and it's real. And so be encouraged. And hey, by the way, yes, once again, I really liked the music today at our church service. If you want to look it up, if you can't get to church, and if you appreciate good singing, well, maybe our singing ain't the greatest, but the songs were good and meaningful. So anyway, University Presbyterian Church, Las Cruces, New Mexico. Now there's probably several University Presbyterian churches. Now there's a YouTube channel that should have just the sermon part, but I think you can watch the whole service if you can find it on Facebook. I think I've seen it over there a couple of times, but I've never actually watched one because it's like, hey, I was there. Why would I watch that again? You know, and I might watch parts of it occasionally if I especially like the singing. So at any rate, I might do that today, but I'm going to finish up with watering the grass and all that good stuff and take care of some cleaning up and stuff around here. And I kind of wanted to take a walk. I intended to take a walk yesterday. I was just lazy. And I only took about a 2.5 miler, and I thought, I should have gone 7 or 8. And I just need to get out of here and just pick them up, put them down, get away from everybody, and pray. And to me, somehow by walking, by making my feet do that, I think differently. In motion, I think differently. So, go figure. Maybe it's a little more oxygen. The boy needs oxygen, that's for sure. You guys have a good day. Remember, into the future, there's a blessing. How can you tell? He said so. And he's never been known to lie before. And on his own honor, defends that. And he shall be vindicated entirely. That's reality for you. Have a good day.